another type of average. This type of average is what we call a weighted average. The weighted average is also a measure of central tendency. The formula for the weighted average is weighted average, or weighted mean, as it is sometimes called, is equal to the summation of W times X over the summation of W. Now, the W in the formula represents the weights. The W represents the weights. In other words, you're going to give weights to the different numbers in the data set. For example, your professor in one of your classes might give you a test. And these might be the scores that you make on the test. You might make an 80 on the first test, a 50 on the second test, a 90, and then a 70. Those are the test scores. Now, the professor might tell you that the tests are weighted. The first test is weighted 10%. The second test is weighted 20%. The third test, 40%. And the last test is weighted 30%. These are the weights, the percentages. In the formula, we have W representing the weights. In the actual situation, the percentages are the weights. The percentages represent the values for W. Now, the variable X, as before, represents the scores. In this case, we're talking about test scores. So the scores are represented by X. In the formula, you have X. In the actual situation, you have 80, 50, 90, and 70. Now, in your denominator of the formula, you also have, again, W, which represents the weights. So the formula here is telling you to multiply each weight times its corresponding score. W is the weight, X is the score. Multiply each weight times its corresponding score. And then you have the summation symbol. That tells us that we have to add those products together. After we multiply each weight times its corresponding score, then we have to sum them. We have to add them together, and then in the denominator, we have to sum the weights. We just have to add the weights together in the denominator. And then we divide the numerator by the denominator. And that gives us what we call the weighted mean. This is how you can figure out your average in your classes. In most of your classes, your professor is probably using a weighted mean. Now, for the example we have here, the weighted mean, or weighted average, as we'll call it, WA, the weighted average, equals the weight of the first score, which is 10, times the first score, the weight times the score, plus the weight of the second score times the second score, plus weight times score, plus weight times score, and it's all divided by the sum of the weights. So we add the weights together in the denominator. We have 10 for the first weight, so we're going to have 10. We have 20 for the second weight, so it'll be 10 plus 20. 40 for the next weight plus 40, and then of course plus 30. This is how we find the weighted mean. Now, we take out the calculator and we do these computations. And we find out that the weighted average or weighted mean equals, we multiply 10 times 80, we get 800. We multiply 20 times 50, we get 1,000. We multiply 40 times 90, we get 3,600. We multiply 30 times 70, we get 2,100. We add the weights together, 10 plus 20 plus 40 plus 30, that gives us 100. We add these numbers together that we have in our numerator, and they sum to 7,500 divided by 100 gives us a weighted average or weighted mean of 75. A weighted average or weighted mean of 75. Now, when you do computations with the weighted mean and with just the plain mean, you'll find that usually you'll get different values. If I find the mean of these scores, I would simply add the scores together and divide by how many I have, if I found the mean. But the weighted mean, I have to multiply the score times its weight, then I have to add those products together and then divide by the sum of the weights.